Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of TPTOC. Behind every great board game there is a mechanism, but behind every great mechanism there is a story. Welcome to the Periodic Table of Components, the podcast where we unpack the history, science, and secrets hidden inside your favorite tabletop games. I'm your host, Greg, and today we're setting up the table for a game that takes us deep into the heart of a modern zoo. We are going to be deconstructing the elements of Art Nova and tell you if the mechanisms integrate with the theme of designing a zoo. In Art Nova, 1 to 4 players will be competing to create a modern zoo that offers the most appeal while ensuring they contribute to crucial conservation projects. Only those who can balance the two will be able to call themselves a master architect of habitats. Art Nova is a Euro-style game designed by Matthias Wig and published by Furlan Spiel and Capstone Games in 2021. Stefan Beeker, Loic Bilal, and Dennis Lohausen provided their talents for the art. Art Nova plays 1 to 4 players, with the Board Game Geek community stating it's best at 2. The average time to play is 90 to 150 minutes and is recommended for those 14 years and older. The average complexity weight, according to BGG, is 3.8. Common mechanisms found within this game are hand management, action selection, contract completion, tile placement, track movement, and racing for points. If you prefer to play digitally, Art Nova is also available for digital play via Board Game Arena, Steam, and Tabletop Simulator. If you love the game, expansion and extra content includes Board Game Arena maps, 3D colored arcade promo building and card, the Art Nova 3D edition, Promotion Team and Capybara promo cards, Zoo Map Pack 2, Art Nova Marine Worlds, and Zoo Map Pack 1. Today we will be looking at the game breakdown, where we set the scene for the overall gameplay and setting. Next, we'll dive into the history and science of modern zoos, followed by the game rules and mechanisms. We'll finish up with the final verdict, where we rate all these on the thematic scale. If this is your first time here at TPTOC, our thematic scale is the rating system where we rate the thematic integrations of gameplay on a scale of 1 to 5. First off, thanks for joining in today, and I hope you enjoy learning the ins and outs of Art Nova as much as I did. Alright, let's get into the breakdown of the game and see what the game of Art Nova is all about. Alright, welcome to the game breakdown. If you've played Art Nova, you know it captures the tense but exciting world of running a scientifically managed zoo. Today I want to break down the real history, science, and the structure of zoos, and see just how accurate those cardboard pieces and card combos actually are. Let's dive in. Before we get too far, let's take a moment to take a quick trip through a modern zoo with an avid animal lover and zoo patron, Matthias. Matthias' first stop, the Manatee Coast. As he watched these gentle giants glide through the water, a keeper dropped a truth bomb. These manatees aren't just exhibits, they are active patients. Through a massive rescue partnership, the zoo rehabilitates injured wild manatees and releases them back into the Florida wild. Did you know manatees are also called sea cows? Next, Matthias headed to the savannah to hand feed a giraffe. But the real jaw-dropper came from the keeper. Did you know modern zoos operate a national giraffe plasma bank? Just like human hospitals, they ship life-saving plasma across the country to save sick calves. Deep in the discovery zones, Matthias found a project dedicated to the tiny endangered American burying beetle. Thanks to local zoo breeding programs, this vital little recycler is being successfully reintroduced to American grasslands. Matthias finished his day with a majestic snow leopard. Nearby, he learned about the species survival plan, a literal matchmaking network ensuring genetic diversity for endangered wildlife. Plus, ticket sales directly fund anti-poaching teams in the Himalayas. Walking out the gates, Matthias realized a modern zoo isn't just a place to look at animals, it's a powerhouse for survival, and by simply walking through the gate, he became part of the mission. Next time you visit a zoo, look closer. You might just be standing on the front line of saving a species. Right, so it looks like Matthias had a good old time at the zoo, but he is ready to get back in the air conditioning and play board games with his own species. First up on the table, you guessed it, Ark Nova. Now, if you haven't played Ark Nova before, don't worry. You don't need to know the rules to enjoy the history and science of zoos and conservation. But hopefully by the end of this podcast, you'll have a better understanding of how it plays and integrates with this fascinating topic. In Ark Nova, you plan and build a modern, scientifically managed zoo. You build enclosures according to the animal's way of life and support conservation projects to ensure the preservation of animal species. Gathering diverse animals increases the attractiveness of your zoo, advancing you on the appeal track and generating higher revenues. Likewise, careful stewardship of the animals allows you to support conservation projects such as breeding programs that lead to your advancement on the conservation track and corresponding bonuses. These two tracks progress in opposite directions. If your counters meet, the game ends. Whoever achieves the best combination of appeal and conservation has built the most successful zoo and wins the game. Association work in different zoo associations allows you to partner with zoos and universities around the world. Together, with specialists and sponsors, they will help you manage the various tasks needed to achieve your goals. Both the designer and the publisher have made every effort to be realistic in the implementation of this game. In very rare cases, however, concessions have been made for the sake of the game mechanics. Let's start off by learning the history and science of zoos. I promise you'll leave today knowing something you never knew about these popular family destinations. Alright, today we're taking a trip to a place almost all of us visited as kids and even as adults, the zoo. But we aren't looking at the animals today, we're looking at the concept of the zoo itself. Because behind those modern glass viewing areas and conservation programs is a wild 5,000-year history of political flexing, royal privilege, and some downright bizarre historical facts. I mean, would you believe me if I told you that in the 13th century, Londoners could watch a polar bear go fishing in the River Thames on a leash? Good thing that this was before they were dumping bodies and waste in it. Or that you used to be able to pay your zoo admission with a stray dog to contribute to the lunch of the animals. Yeah, it gets weird. So let's dive into how zoos evolved from ancient royal power moves into the modern conservation hubs we know today. First, let's do a quick terminology. Where does the word zoo even come from? Now, the technical term is zoological garden. Zoology comes from ancient Greek zoion, meaning animal, and the suffix logia, meaning the study of. So literally a garden for studying animals. But humans are inherently lazy, so we have to shorten it. The actual abbreviation zoo was coined in England, used for the very first time to describe the London Zoological Gardens in the 19th century. Here at TPTOC, I try not to be lazy with language, but sometimes we might do that. Before it was called a zoo, these places were known by a much more aristocratic name, menageries. And menageries weren't for the public, they were private collections of exotic animals kept by the ultra-wealthy. The desire to own the wild goes back way further than you think. The oldest known menagerie was discovered by archaeologists in Heracleopolis, Egypt, dating all the way back to roughly 3500 BCE. We're talking over 5,000 years ago. This is making me think of human beings and their board games. Us board gamers, we are collecting our board games, but we're not the ultra wealthy here. But it looks like humans have been obsessed with collecting things for thousands of years. Alright, let's get back to the history here. Excavations near a ruler's tomb revealed the remains of hippos, elephants, baboons, and wildcats. Back then, keeping these animals wasn't about education, it was the ultimate status symbol. So apparently humans have been flexing for thousands of years and are still obsessed with flexing on each other. Alright, so for thousands of years this stayed the norm. Rulers kept menageries to flex their political muscle, entertain elite guests, or use exotic animals as high-stakes diplomatic gifts. King Solomon of Israel did it, the Han Dynasty in China did it, King Louis XIV at the Palace of Versailles had a legendary one, but perhaps the wildest of them all was the Tower of London menagerie founded by King John in the 1200s. It housed lions, leopards, an elephant, and that polar bear I mentioned earlier. The King of Norway gifted the polar bear, and the keepers would literally walk it down to the River Thames on a long leash so it could swim around and catch fish. By the way, the Tower Menagerie eventually opened to the public, and the admission price was unique. If you didn't have money, you could bring a stray cat or dog to feed to the main cats, and I'm not lying around here. Check the show notes. And that's not going to be the first of animal puns I'm going to throw in here. Thankfully, by 1835, that collection was shut down and the remaining animals were moved to a much more civil environment, the London Zoo. The turning point started in the 18th century in 1752. Tiergarten Schönbrunn opened in Vienna, Austria. It started as a royal menagerie, but it holds the title today as the world's oldest continuously operating zoo. Then came the French Revolution in 1793. The revolutionaries dismantled the royal menagerie at Versailles and moved the animals to the Jardin des Plantes in Paris. We're struggling with these words today, y'all. This was huge. It established one of the first free public zoos, changing the narrative from aristocratic privilege to public education. But the real game changer was the London Zoo in 1828. Created by the Zoological Society of London, it was the first facility built explicitly for scientific study rather than just amusement. They were innovating constantly. In 1853, the London Zoo pioneered the very first public aquarium, which triggered a massive wave of aquarium openings all across Europe and the United States. Soon the patrons were flooding the gates. In Art Nouveau, this historical tension is represented perfectly by the appeal track, the ticket icon. When you play a flashy animal, your ticket sales go up, your income increases, and during the break, you will reap these rewards from your sales. Even though zoos were becoming public and scientific, the animals were still largely kept in bleak concrete cages with iron bars. That changed in 1907, thanks to a man named Karl Hagenbeck at the Tierpark Hagenbeck in Germany. Hagenbeck revolutionized zoo design forever. He threw out the cages and replaced them with moats and hidden barriers. Suddenly, visitors were looking at open-air, naturalistic panoramas. It gave the illusion that the animals were roaming free together in the wild. In the game, you can't just throw a Siberian tiger into a generic one-tile space. You have to trigger your build action, pay for a specific enclosure size, and ensure it's adjacent to rock or water space on your map. Just like Hagenbeck's design, that geography matters. Alright, let's fast forward to the 20th century where things get a little bit better for us as far as zoos go. And the concept of a zoo started fracturing into different types of facilities in the 20th century to serve different purposes. You have safari parks, or zoo parks, which took Hagenbeck's idea to the extreme. The first one was Whipsnade Park in England in 1931. These are massive open outdoor areas where visitors drive through in cars to see animals roaming in close proximity. In the game, you can literally play sponsor cards to build a safari park or a geographic zoo, giving you massive, specialized tile spaces. Then you have petting zoos, designed for kids to interact closely with docile domestic animals. In Ark Nova, the petting zoo is a unique double-sided special enclosure tile. You can't put a rhino in there, but you can pack it full of cheap domestic animals to shoot your early game income through the roof. And on the flip side, you have roadside zoos. Roadside zoos, they are often found in remote areas of North America. These are small, for-profit, and historically less regulated setups meant to pull tourists off the highway to local establishments. While Ark Nova focuses on modern, accredited facilities, the game forces you to deal with temptation of quick, cheap money via questionable sponsors versus long-term scientific credibility. This brings us to where we are today. By the 1970s, fortunately, society started looking at zoos with a much more critical eye. Historically, zoos face entirely justified criticism for poor animal welfare and treating living creatures like living museum exhibits. Because of that, major zoos underwent a massive cultural pivot. The focus shifted away from pure entertainment and locked entirely out onto conservation, education, and captive breeding. In 1981, the Species Survival Plan, or SSP, was introduced to help zoos globally manage and protect threatened or endangered species. This is where your conservation track comes in the game Ark Nova. Today, zoos are more popular than ever. In the United States alone, they draw over 181 million visitors every year. While the debate over animal captivity continues, there's no denying that the modern accredited zoo is a far cry from the Pharaoh's tombs or the bloody history of the Tower of London. They've evolved from symbols of human dominance over nature to our best hope for preserving it. As we enjoy the games on the table, we cannot forget the real stories we should share to make the world better, much as we are doing and evolving with zoo captivity. Alright, so speaking of advancing to the next level, let's dive into the science of zoological gardens. Zoos are not just constructed to give you the easiest path to the bathroom after you have just guzzled your $10 elephant cup of water. Modern zoo design relies heavily on behavioral psychology and physics rather than still bars. For example, many enclosures use deep moats that are mathematically calculated based on specific animals' maximum jumping distance. For animals that can climb, zoos use hot wires. These are mild, harmless electrostatic pulses hidden inside realistic-looking artificial vines to condition animals to stay away from boundaries. They will also be designing zoos for stereotypy. Unfortunately, fidget spinners are not a common aspect of animal play, but zoo biologists use a science called behavioral enrichment to prevent stereotypy. Stereotypy is repetitive, non-functional behaviors like pacing or swaying that animals develop when bored. To keep their minds sharp, keepers use cognitive challenges such as hiding food inside frozen ice blocks, spraying perfume like Calvin Klein's Obsession, which apparently big cats famously love, to stimulate their sense of smell or using puzzle feeders. Next, they use physics of microclimates. What about moderating the climate for the animals? Zoos in colder climates can house tropical animals like lions and primates year-round thanks to microclimate engineering. Artificial rock formations are often built with internal radiant heating elements. Essentially, they are giant heating pads for the animals. The animals learn exactly where these warm spots are, allowing them to comfortably lounge outdoors even in the winter. Next up is the Match.com for endangered species. Zoos don't just breed animals randomly. They use highly scientific framework called the Species Survival Plan. Biologists use a massive global database to analyze the DNA and family trees of animals across hundreds of institutions. A computer algorithm then matches individuals with the lowest possible genetic kinship to maximize genetic diversity and prevent inbreeding. You can think of it pretty much Tinder for zoo animals. I guess swipe right if you have 4 legs. Kinda, but not really. Alright, that was a bad pun. We'll move on. Alright, so shifting the microbiome. Recent veterinary science has shown that animals' microbiome, the trillions of bacteria living in their gut, changes significantly when they enter a zoo environment. Because zoo diets are cleaner and less varied than wild diets, researchers are actively studying how to introduce specific wild plants and soil bacteria into zoo habitats to keep the animals' immune systems robust. What about reverse nocturnal lighting? To allow the public to see nocturnal animals like bats, owls, and certain rodents when they are actually active, zoos use reverse lighting cycles. During the day, the exhibit is flooded with dim red or blue light, which the animals perceive as darkness, prompting them to wake up and hunt. At night, these exhibits are hit with bright white light, signaling to the animals that it's time to sleep. And just a reminder, don't forget about these requirements as you build your structures on your player mat in the game Ark Nova. And we'll get into the specifics of that when we get into gameplay. But you can see us involved in here that the actual gameplay mirrors some of the science that we're learning. When you play an animal card in Ark Nova, look at the text abilities. Abilities like pack behaviors, sprinting, or digging aren't just flavor text. They dictate how the card interacts with your tableau, mimicking the exact biological traits keepers try to bring out in real-world habitats. More on this in the rules section. Lastly, there's only 2 guaranteed things in life: death and animal taxonomy. Alright, so how do zoos organize all this data? They do it through what we call taxonomy. Taxonomy is the Linnaean system of categorization, which includes categories such as kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Zoos will also categorize animals fundamentally by class: mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish, and also by their diet, which is herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. You may recall some of this terminology from your previous schooling here. Alright, so if you want to win a game of Ark Nova, you have to master taxonomy, and get ready for another pun, or we should say taxonomy. You guys know that this game comes with so many tags, so I'm going to call it taxonomy. Every animal card features prominent icon tags at the top of the card, the tags. Some of the different tags will include continent tags. These represent the animal's geographic origin. They can be Africa, Asia, Australia. Animal class tags include primates, reptiles, birds, herbivores, or etc. You cannot support a global conservation project for predators unless you have successfully collected the correct biological tags in your zoo. The game forces you to think like a taxonomist, matching evolutionary traits to secure scientific funding. Alright, that was the science of Ark Nova. That was kind of a lot, and hopefully you guys are still with us here. But we got here, we learned about history of zoological gardens, and dipped into how science is enhancing the lives of animals and the experience of the viewers. We will get into the game rules now, but don't forget about those tags I just mentioned because those are very important in the game. Alright, welcome back everybody. Let's get into the rules of the game Ark Nova. We learned about the history, the science here. We're going to learn about the game rules, and we're going to tie it all together by the end of the show with our mechanism integration and thematic scale. This might be a little bit of a long section. I'm going to do my best to summarize the rules to you so you get a feel of how the game flows, but it's not going to detail every single aspect of the game. Just keep that as a reminder. So first we'll start with a general overview. Ark Nova does not play in formal rounds. Instead, players are going to simply take turns in clockwise order, taking one turn at a time until the end of the game is triggered. Also, there are coffee breaks triggered during the game when the game is put on hold for an administration phase. During these breaks, you will discard cards down to your hand limit, recall your workers, and gain income, among other things. You always perform one action during your turn, which may trigger additional effects and bonuses. You perform these actions with the 5 action cards displayed below your zoo map. We'll get into the specifics of these action cards shortly. Some things you can do are to expand your zoo, play zoo cards, and draw new ones. The position of the action card determines how much you can do with that specific action. That is a basic overview of what you're doing in this game. Let's dive deep into all the bits of Ark Nova. The namesake of this podcast, the components. For this part, I'm going to go through the component list and detail how these interact with the mechanisms of the game. First off, we have, wait for it, 212 zoo cards in this game. Yeah, this game comes with an enormous amount of cards. There are a ton of cards in this game, and each one of them is different. Within these 212 zoo cards, you'll find 128 animal cards. These are the animals you will put into your zoo enclosures. They require an empty enclosure. They'll provide your zoo with appeal points, among other various gameplay effects. The heart of the game are these effects and how you efficiently use them to race up the score tracks. You also have 64 sponsor cards. These sponsors provide various effects in the game, much like the animal cards. And then you have 20 conservation project cards within this deck. Players can take an action to play these and contribute to the association board, providing them conservation points. Next up, we have 11 final scoring cards. These will provide variable in-game scoring for the players, and 2 are given to each player during setup, but you will actually only score 1 of these at the end of the game. Players will have to discard 1 when someone reaches 10 points on the conservation track. This allows players to plan for an in-game scoring goal by that point. At setup, you will also randomly choose from 12 base conservation project cards, depending on player count, to have starting projects to contribute to throughout the game. Players will not want to ignore these cards and ensure they reach them before their opponents. The game also includes 20 double-sided action cards. Each player will get the same 5 different action cards at the beginning of the game. Throughout the game, you will want to upgrade these, and the game offers 4 ways to do this, leaving 1 card that won't get upgraded. The 5 main actions you will take throughout the game are titled Cards, Animals, Sponsors, Build, and Association. We'll get into the specifics of these mechanisms here shortly. First, let's talk about the game board. Ark Nova has one double-sided game board. On this board, you will find the following. Around the perimeter of the board is the appeal track and the conservation tracks. They parallel each other, going in opposite directions in value. You will have 2 markers to track your progress, and the end game will be triggered when one player has crossed these 2. As you progress on the conservation track, you will pass 6 bonus tile spaces. 2 are pre-printed on the board, encouraging players to move up there before their opponents. Towards the center of the board is the reputation track. It is used to track your reputation with your marker. As you move up in reputation, you will have access to more cards in the display. As you progress, you will also gain some one-time benefits. If you want to progress past the 9th spot, you will have to upgrade your card's action card. Constructing a zoo is hard work, so as your players take certain actions, we will have to take a coffee break when the coffee marker passes the end of the break track. We'll get back to that coffee break in a minute, but until then, let's get back to work with the game board. Also in the center of the board is the card display. It contains 6 spots to display an array of zoo cards. Along these folder slots, you'll notice familiar cities that house your favorite zoos. Think of this display as a river because as cards are taken, they slide down towards a discard pile, filling in the gaps. Obviously, there will be a draw pile, but most likely there'll be multiple draw piles because of the massive deck of cards in the game. On the opposite end of this is the discard pile. That's it for the game board. Let's take a look at a smaller board placed next to it, the association board. This board has 8 card slots around the perimeter to hold active conservation projects to contribute to during the game. On the actual board itself are 5 association worker placement spots for when you perform the association's action card. The 0 spot has donation slots for when you have upgraded your association's action card to donate money, gaining you conservation points. Slot number 2 is you simply gain 2 reputation on the reputation track. The 3rd is gaining a partner zoo. There are 5 available continent tokens to place on your player board. Partner zoo tokens provide a $3 discount to animal cards with a matching continent icon, and some cards require you to have these partner zoos specifically. The 4th worker placement spot is the university slot, where you gain universities. There are 3 different types of universities providing different benefits and tags. Lastly, the 5th spot is the support a conservation project action. When you support a conservation project, you get to remove tokens from your player board that provide variable bonuses. You will then gain conservation points when you place your token on the project card. Now let's look at your actual zoo. This is yours and yours only. Construct it in a way that best accommodates your animals. There are 8 double-sided player mats, which we're going to call zoo maps, provided with different abilities depending on the variant of the game you choose. There are 4 type A, 4 type zeros, and hopefully you guys, once you learn the game, you choose the 8 asymmetric abilities. There is a observation tower, outdoor areas, commercial harbor, park restaurant, research institute, ice cream parlor, and Hollywood Hills. All these provide different abilities to each player. On the left side of the board, you will find your conservation tokens and their associated benefits. All provide an immediate benefit, but only some will give you an income benefit. The heart of the player mat is the center. This is your zoo hexagonal map. You will place enclosure tiles here to house your animals, kiosks, or pavilions. Every board has different bonuses when certain spaces are covered. Also, there are rock and water spaces which you are not allowed to build on. Toward the right, you will see 4 spaces for your partner zoos, some gameplay reminders, 3 spaces for your universities, 3 spaces for your locked association workers, and 1 notepad to store your money, unlocked association workers, and your X tokens. Lastly, on the bottom of your player board are the 5 slots for your action cards depicting the strength of the action numbered 1 through 5. So that was your player board itself. Next up are the 90 standard enclosures, which come in various sizes. These are double-sided tiles that are used to house your animals with an empty and occupied side. There are 28 one-space tiles, 24 two-space tiles, 15 three-space tiles, 13 four-space tiles, and 10 five-space tiles. If you don't build an enclosure, you can choose to build a kiosk or pavilion on your zoo map. There are 34 tiles provided in the game. Kiosk will provide you valuable income during the breaks, and pavilions will provide appeal points. You can also choose to build 12 special enclosures depending on if you meet the requirements. These are double-sided tiles that are used to house multiple specialized animals. There are 4 petting zoos, 4 reptile houses, and 4 large bird aviaries. There are 15 unique buildings. These are gained by playing certain sponsorship cards. They include special attractions for your zoo, such as an adventure playground, aerial cableway, an aquarium, a baboon rock, a barred owl hut, a meerkat den, okapi stable, penguin pool, polar bear exhibit, a rhesus monkey park, a sea turtle tank, a side entrance, a spotted hyena compound, a water playground, and a zoo school. We like animals here, but we also like money, so the game provides 70 money tokens. Players will start with 25 money at the beginning of the game. You will further gain more during income, depending on your appeal, and through other effects in the game. Your money is mainly used to pay for animals and building enclosures. There are 40 one-size enclosures, 10 size, I'm talking about money here. There are 41 money tokens in value 1, and 10 5s, 10 10s, and 10 20s. As we said earlier, you can gain partner zoos, and there are 20 partner zoo tokens in the game. There are 4 of each different continents. There are for Asia, Africa, Australia, the Americas, and Europe. These are gained when taking the Strength 3 Association worker action. As you build your zoo, you will have to partner with local universities. The game provides 12 university tokens. These are gained when taking the Strength 4 Association worker action and come in 4 of each 3 different types that include hand limit size, and 1 reputation. 1 provides 2 science tags, and the last one provides 1 science tag and a reputation. There are 9 bonus tiles with which during setup you will place 5 randomly on the game board. You can enhance your actions throughout the game, and this is done by the X tokens and are used to increase the strength of your actions. Some bonuses will provide action multipliers, and there are 8 multiplier tokens in the game. If you choose to play the variant where you can negatively affect other players, you will use the 8 venom and constriction tokens. For those lone wolves out there, there is a solo board provided, and for those neat freaks, there are 2 organizers to sort all these tokens and bits in the game. Closing up on the components, there is 1 glossary book which provides explanations for the card symbols and effects. There is 1 icon overview book which provides explanations for the icons within the game, and lastly, 1 rule book. This brings us to the rules of the game. If you're still with us here, this will be a generalization and not every aspect of the game is discussed, as I said before. So let's jump into the rules of the game. Alright, let's get into the rules of the game. So in this game, you're going to be mostly taking actions with those 5 action cards on your turn. These cards are going to be displayed below your player board in a slot ranging from 1 to 5. The slot determines the strength of the action you're performing. On your turn, you will choose one action card to perform its action. After the action is performed, the card is moved to slot 1, shifting all your other cards right to greater strengths. You may use X tokens to increase the strength of this action, and certain benefits in the game will allow you to flip your cards to their upgraded side, which provides similar but better actions. Let's get into what each of these action cards do. First up is the Cards card. So the Cards action allows you to gain new zoo cards, but you will have to progress the break token 2 spaces. The basic side will do the following. It allows you to draw the indicated number of cards from the deck, and sometimes you may have to discard cards from your hand. It also allows you to snap cards. Snapping is when you take any one card from the display. If you upgrade this card, you can now draw cards from within your reputation range, and also from draw cards from the deck as you did before, and also you may have to discard cards if applicable. Also, you're able to snap cards from the display with the upgraded side, and that is the Cards card action. So pretty simple, it's just getting you new cards. One important note is that you shouldn't hoard cards within your hand, because those precious cards are going to get discarded down to your hand size during the next break. Next action card you have is the Build action card. This one allows you to build enclosures to house the animal cards that you have. The Build action allows you to build these enclosures. You can also build kiosks and pavilions. You will have to pay 2 money per space of the enclosure. Then you put the enclosure tile on your zoo map and gain any benefits if you cover a bonus space. The basic side only allows you to build 1 building. You're still paying 2 money per space, and the available buildings you can build are just standard enclosures, kiosks, pavilions, and petting zoos. Now, if you upgrade this action card, you can build multiple buildings. You still pay 2 money per space, but you now have newly available buildings. The Large Bird Aviary and the Reptile House. And it also allows you to build previous blocked spaces on your zoo map. So on your zoo map, you have some icons that tell you you cannot build there unless you have upgraded this card. That is the Build action card. The next action card is the Animals action. Once you have built your enclosures, you will want to take the Animals action. This allows you to add animals to an empty enclosure, but you must be able to pay the money and fulfill any conditions on the card. You get a discount if you have a matching partner zoo, and these animals have special abilities that provide tags, appeal, and contribute to conservation project requirements. Also, who doesn't like to look at the different animals throughout the game? If you know Latin, feel free to name the scientific name of the animal provided on each card. That'll show them who's the real smarty around the table. So if you feel the need to, there are scientific names on the card as some minor flavor text. So the basic side allows you to play animals from your hand, but you must meet the condition, pay the cost, fill an empty enclosure, and then you place the animal card in your tableau and execute any of its effects. If you upgrade this action card, you can now play animals from your hand and or within reputation range on the board. That comes with an additional cost. You must still meet all the requirements as before, and maybe you can get some of that reputation back after you've nerded out on the scientific names. The conditions you will find on cards include the enclosure size the animal requires, if there are any enclosure rock or water adjacency requirements, and specific tags may be needed. The animals you place in your zoo are categorized, and these are categorized by birds, herbivores, predators, primates, reptiles, bears, and petting zoo animals. That is the Animals action card. The next action card here is the Association action. Now that you're getting patrons in your zoo and your appeal has increased, make sure you don't ignore the conservation research and reaching out to several associations. To do this, you will have to take the association action. You will send your association workers to the association board to do an action depending on the strength of the action. You can do things like gain 2 reputation, gain partnerships, gain universities, contribute to conservation projects, and possibly make a donation. Look at you becoming an animal philanthropist. On the basic side, you can only perform 1 association task. If you upgrade the card, you can now perform 1 or more different association tasks, and you may now make donations. That was the associations action. Next up is the sponsors action. You want to bring sponsors to your zoo, so now you have to take the sponsors action. This will gain you support of valuable sponsors for your zoo. These guys or gals will give you special abilities and enclosures. Place the card in your tableau and don't forget to remember any ongoing benefits they provide. On the basic side, you can play only one sponsor card or advance the break token and take money. On the upgraded side, you can now play 1 or more sponsor cards or advance the break token and take double the amount of money. Those are the 5 action cards. Now, if your zoo needs a little help or you're doing some pre-planning in the game, you can always use an action card to just simply take an X token. But you'll quickly learn that this is not the most efficient thing to do, but can be powerful in certain situations. Alright, so those are all of the actions. Only the one who can do them most efficiently and gain the most appeal and conservation points will become victorious. This leads us into the end of the game and final scoring. Now that a player has first crossed their appeal and conservation markers, this is going to trigger the end of the game, and you will go on to final scoring. All other players are going to get 1 more turn, unless the end of game was triggered during a coffee break. In that case, all players will get another turn. Now let's see who the real king of the jungle is. First, reveal your final scoring card and take the associated amount of points. Then calculate any points gained from zoo cards and in-game icons. Then you're going to next determine the final victory points. You do this by calculating the difference between your appeal tracker and conservation tracker, and then it is possible to get negative points at this point in the game. Not all zoos can master the balance of appeal and conservation, so the player with the highest points wins. If there are any ties, you will break them by the most supported conservation projects, and if that doesn't break the tie, just shake on it, call it a shared victory, and play again. Now you know the rules of the game. Get out there and build your zoo and defeat your opponents. But before we get too far, let's talk about those card effects and the mechanisms of the game. Here at TPTOC, we like to take a deep dive on some aspects of the game that bring the theme out. In Ark Nova, you may notice some terminology on the cards, but did you know there's an actual thematic tie-in to these? There's a purpose for all of these in terms of animal behavior. Hopefully I don't bore you enough. Is that enough animal puns yet? I don't know. We'll see. All right. So the first term we are going to get into is the assertion. An assertion refers to the active behavioral expression of dominance, territoriality, or confidence. So again, these are all in regards to animal behavior. Next is the boost. In evolutionary biology and genetics, a boost refers to the enhancement of or amplification of a specific physical or behavioral trait. This process usually occurs through natural selection, where advantageous traits help an animal survive, or selective breeding. Next up is clever. In evolutionary biology, cleverness refers to highly specialized adaptations and behavioral flexibilities that help species outwit environmental challenges to survive and reproduce. Rather than just pure brain power, it encompasses evolutionary ingenuity, how natural selection refines anatomy, instincts, and problem-solving skills to fit specific ecological niches. Constriction. Constriction primarily refers to a specialized hunting and subduing tactic used by certain snakes where they wrap their muscular bodies around prey. Determination. Determination or behavioral determinism refers to the complex combination of factors ranging from genetics to environment that dictate why an animal acts the way it does. No behavior is strictly determined by just one thing. Rather, it is the result of a continuous interplay between nature and nurture. Digging. Digging is a natural, instinct-driven action often rooted in evolutionary survival. Animals dig to find food, regulate body temperature, escape predators, cache resources, or prepare safe nesting areas. It serves as both a physical necessity and a way to relieve stress or boredom. Dominance. Dominance refers to a social relationship where one individual has priority access to limited resources like food, mates, or resting spots over another, achieved through coercive capacity, threat, or intimidation. Right, flock animals. A flock animal refers to a species that instinctively gathers, moves, or lives in large, coordinated groups, predominantly birds, though the term also applies to certain mammals like sheep and goats. This behavior maximizes survival by improving predator detection, simplifying foraging, and creating aerodynamic energy efficiency during flight. Full-throated. A full-throated vocalization, like a roar or a song, is a powerful, uninhibited sound that uses the animal's vocal anatomy at maximum capacity. These displays serve as a critical survival and reproductive signals, communicating dominance, territorial boundaries, and individual identity across vast distances. Hunter. A hunter or predator is an organism that actively seeks, pursues, and captures other animals for sustenance. This behavior relies on a sequential chain of actions: searching, stalking and ambushing, attacking, and consuming. Hypnosis. When scientists use the term hypnosis in regards to animal behavior, they are generally referring to tonic immobility. This is an innate temporary state of profound physical paralysis and reduced responsiveness triggered by physical restraint or perceived danger. Unlike human hypnosis, which relies on verbal suggestion and relaxation, animal hypnosis is a survival mechanism. Jumping. Jumping is an animal behavior is a ballistic form of locomotion or communication where an animal uses sudden muscular effort to leave the ground. It serves diverse evolutionary purposes, including avoiding predators, capturing prey, navigating complex terrain, traveling, and signaling fitness or social boundaries. Peacocking. Peacocking is a display of vibrant colors, exaggerated physical traits, or flamboyant behaviors used by males to attract females during mating season. Rooted in sexual selection, it proves the animal has superior genes and the stamina to survive despite the survival disadvantages of their flashy appearance. Pilfering. Pilfering is the act of stealing food or resources that another animal has hidden or stored. It is a widespread evolutionary pressure driving many species to constantly balance the energetic cost of gathering food against the risk of having it stolen. Posturing. Posturing refers to specific body language, stances, or physical displays that animals use to communicate intentions, emotions, or social status. It serves as a vital nonverbal tool for survival, allowing animals to interact, avoid physical conflict, and secure mates without engaging in dangerous fights. A pouch primarily refers to specialized anatomical features used to protect offspring, store food, or provide physical flexibility. These distinct biological pockets directly shape how animals forage, reproduce, and navigate threats in their environments. Resistance. Resistance generally refers to any adaptive action or trait that animals use to avoid, survive, or alter stressful situations, treatments, or threats. This concept is critical in evolutionary biology, pest control, and animal training. Scavenging. Scavenging is a foraging strategy where animals consume dead or decaying organic matter, discarded prey, or plant matter that they did not kill or harvest themselves. It functions as a critical energy pathway in ecosystems. Snapping. Snapping refers to a rapid closing of the jaws. Depending on the context, it functions as a clear warning sign, a natural communication cue, or an expression of high energy play. The specific meaning varies based on the trigger and the species involved. Sunbathing. Sunbathing or basking is a vital survival mechanism. Far from just a leisurely activity, animals use solar radiation to regulate body temperature, known as thermoregulation. They maintain optimal metabolism, trigger mood-boosting hormones, and eliminate unwanted parasites or bacteria from their fur and feathers. And lastly, we have venom. Animal venom is a biochemical weapon actively injected via fangs, stingers, or spurs. In the context of animal behavior, venom functions as an evolutionary tool for survival, allowing animals to manipulate their environment and dictate interaction with predators, prey, and competitors without needing immense physical strength. Now that you know what those effects mean when you play the cards, you may find some similarities to the actual traits of the animal you are playing. That brings us to more mechanisms, and then we're going to close out on our final verdict. Alright, so hang tight, don't stray too far. Let's get into the mechanisms of Ark Nova. Now we know what it looks like to play, but how do the gears actually turn behind the scenes? Let's zoom in on the core mechanisms that hold this entire experience together. In Ark Nova, mechanisms represent the logistics of running a modern, scientifically managed zoo. The game's core tension, balancing appeal with conservation, is brilliantly mirrored by two scoring tracks that move in opposite directions, forcing players to harmonize commercial success with environmental stewardship. Hopefully by this point you get the gist of that we are building a zoo. Let's talk about how this game integrates that with your actions, which we are going to call theme and mechanical integration. The integration of the theme and mechanics can be broken down into the following key systems. First off, we have the action selection mechanism, where the mechanic is your 5 main actions are laid out on a one-defined track below your player board. When you perform an action, its strength corresponds to the slot it occupies. Once used, the card returns to the first slot, pushing all other cards to the right, which makes them more powerful on subsequent turns. This is thematically integrated by representing the effort, planning, and focus required to run a zoo. After you dedicate significant energy to a task, that department needs time to recover before it can operate at peak efficiency again. You can't just send your association workers out every turn and ignore the other parts of your zoo. The next system is the action of building enclosures. The mechanic is when you use the build action to place standard or specialized enclosures on your personal zoo map grid. These enclosures must strictly adhere to specific geographical requirements such as bordering water or rock formations. The thematic integration is that the reality of zoological design and animal welfare comes to the placement of the enclosures. You cannot simply put an aquatic animal in a standard grassland exhibit. The habitat design must suit the animal's way of life. The next mechanism is playing your animals cards. When you play animal cards into your pre-built enclosures by paying money and meeting specific prerequisite icons, this reflects modern biodiversity and conservation realities. Many exotic or endangered species are incredibly sensitive and require specific environments or the presence of a proper veterinary and educational foundation to thrive. The next mechanism is the conservation and reputation tracks. When you use your association workers to gain international university partnerships, support global conservation projects, and hire specialists, doing so advances your marker on the conservation track, while adding exciting animals to your zoo advances your appeal. The game ends as a race when a player's appeal and conservation markers cross paths. This thematically integrates running zoos and aquariums because you must balance the commercial imperative to attract visitors with their scientific and philanthropic responsibilities. The crisscrossing tracks simulate the necessity of both. Running a popular zoo brings in the capital and platform necessary to successfully fund and execute real conservation projects. In the real world, the line between a terrible roadside zoo and a world-class institution comes down to accreditation from bodies like the WAZA, which is a World Association, and the AZA, which is in North America. The AZA runs the Species Survival Plan, or SSP, which coordinates breeding across different facilities. Zoos rely on corporate partnerships for ESG goals and individual animal adoptions to fund this daily care. In Ark Nova, this is the entire engine of the game. You have an association board where you send your workers to gain partner zoos across continents or universities to increase your research. If you build a massive exploitative theme park with a high appeal but zero conservation, you are going to score negative points. If you do nothing but pure science without making money to fund it, you're also going to lose. It perfectly mirrors the modern zoo's tightrope walk, balancing public entertainment with ethical survival. Finally, let's address the heavy stuff, releasing those animals. In reality, releasing a zoo animal into the wild is rarely a simple open the cage moment. Most captive-born animals are non-releasable due to social imprinting on humans or lack of hunting instincts. True reintroduction requires intense pre-release training and soft releases in massive wild zones. When you support a release into the wild project in Ark Nova, it is a massive bittersweet strategic move. You have to choose an animal currently in your zoo, completely remove it from your board, and flip its enclosure back to empty. You physically lose the appeal and ticket income that animal was generating for you because the public can no longer see it, but in return, you rocket forward on the conservation track. The game accurately hits you with the exact emotional and financial sacrifice real conservationists face. Doing what is right for the species means letting go of the asset that makes you money. To conclude on all these mechanisms, whether you are walking through the naturalistic paths of a modern accredited facility or sitting at your dining room table staring at a hand of complex cards, the lesson is exactly the same. A modern zoo isn't a collection of animals. It is a delicate ecosystem of architecture, science, finance, and ethics. Matthias Wig didn't just build a fun board game, he built a surprisingly accurate simulator of one of our most complex cultural institutions. Next time you take the association action or buy a ticket to a real zoological garden, take a look at that invisible infrastructure at work. This brings us to our final verdict. Where do you think Ark Nova will end up on our thematic scale? Let's find out in our next section. Alright, this brings us to the final verdict. Every episode we wrap up by placing our game on the thematic scale. We're going to look at how well the game's design actually honors the real science and history we just discussed. This scale ranges from 1 to 5 for these aspects. We look at mechanical integration, component immersion, narrative evolution, flavor text impact, thematic decisions, tension and pacing, the science and history accuracy, and finally give it an overall score for gameplay. Let's talk about the mechanical integration of this game. There's a lot of mechanisms in this game we just discussed, but for me, I think it's easy to say that Ark Nova deserves a 4 for mechanical integration. Why is this? Well, you're just moving tracks and playing cards. I understand that, but I think the designer brought real-life aspects of building a zoo with these mechanisms the best he could. So when you're making decisions in the game, you have to make it's going to make you bring out similar tough decisions you would face running a real zoo. So as you're playing those action cards and moving those tracks, I think the decision point when you're doing that would be similar to if you were actually running a zoo. Do I actually play this animal in this enclosure? What size enclosure should I build? All that good stuff. So yeah, it gets a 4 for me for mechanical integration. Next up is the component immersion. How well do these components make you feel you are actually in the game or building a zoo? The components in this game don't really reinforce the setting of a real zoo to me, but it's pretty darn close. The zoo maps and the enclosures have appealing art, and I think the artists and graphic designers did a fantastic job. And physically placing these is pretty fun for those of us who like spatial puzzles. The cards are real depictions of animals, which I think is very important to this in the game. If the designer chose like a cartoonish look to the animals or just characterizations of animals, I don't think this game would be nearly as immersive as it is. So for the component immersion aspect, I'm going to give this a 3. It's about mid for me. Yes, and there's essentially just wooden meeples, but I think what brings it up to a 3 for me are those cards and the card art, and even some of the flavor text, which we'll get into in a minute, that kind of helps it out with the card play. Next up is the narrative evolution. How well does this game help you build stories and stories around the theme? So in this game, obviously you are building a zoo, but are you really building a story of your character building a zoo? I'm not convinced. I really don't think so. So for narrative evolution, this is going to land in at a 1 for me. You're not really telling a story as you build your zoo in this game. One huge aspect to this rating is the fact that this game is multiplayer solitaire for sure. So when players are playing this game, you're essentially going to be playing your own game and not really interacting with the other players. So with that in mind, you're not building really any stories around the table as you build your zoo. So for sure, narrative evolution is a 1 for me. I can't really imagine anybody being able to build a story, especially for that multiplayer solitaire aspect. I just mentioned this a minute ago, but let's do a dive into the flavor text impact, or in my opinion, the lack thereof in this game. So the only flavor text offered are the scientific names of the animals. And you could maybe argue that the card effects show thematically what you're doing. Kind of, we went through all the descriptions of those card effects, but does it really feel like you're doing that? No, I don't really think so. I don't think it brings any of the theme out in the game other than pretty much basic information on the cards you're playing. So flavor text for me is coming in at a 2, lower on the scale for those specific reasons. But what brought it from a 1 to 2 for me are those hints of theme within those card effects, like digging and snapping, that kind of thing. But if a player doesn't realize these thematic integrations, then it's not going to matter, really. So, yep, flavor text impact is a 2 for me. Let's roll into the thematic decision integration. All right, so making decisions in this game, how well does that correlate to the theme? I mentioned a little bit earlier, but for this, thematic decision integration is a 5 for me. This is top tier. So when you are making those decisions in the game, I think those are similar to what you would be doing when you're building an actual zoo. I think it's an obvious 5 here. Every action and decision in the game is crucial to the success of your zoo compared to the other players. Am I going to support that conservation project right now to get that quick bump, or try to collect more of those tags and get a bigger payout if I have more tags for that specific conservation project? The decisions are pretty tense and interesting, but efficiency is key to win the game here. So as you're building a zoo, I've heard a lot of people say that you don't really get to choose how your zoo is going to be built. The game does kind of drive you towards, but I think even with that, the decisions to actually play the specific animals that are needed for the conservation projects, that is crucial to win the game. So yep, that's thematic decisions. I'm giving that a 5 on the thematic scale. Next up, let's talk about the tension and pacing in this game. How well does the game flow and keep you immersed within the theme? The tension and pacing in this game can be pretty slow, in my opinion. That's why I'm giving it a 2. Some actions are streamlined and quick, while others, like playing animal cards and carrying out their effects, can take some time, especially if players hit one of those sweet combos. Yes, it's nice for you on your turn, but it's going to slow down gameplay for sure. So it's not really keeping everybody within the theme of the game. So tension and pacing is a 2. The time in between turns can be a little excessive, especially at higher player counts. I think this is a main reason why most users on BGG recommend this at 2, and I would also recommend this no more than 2. I have played it at higher player counts, and it's not horrible. Just need to know that as you go into the game, it is going to be a longer game. But for me, I enjoy this game, and it's not that big of a deal. So keeping you not that immersed in the theme and what others are doing, because of most of the time it really doesn't affect your gameplay. I mentioned that a minute ago. So if somebody takes a card you wanted or triggers a tag bonus that you might care, but that's about it. Mostly you're just playing your own game while not caring about what others do. Next up is how well does the history and science come through in the theme? So the history of zoos is not apparent in this game, which is not a big deal because you're building a modern zoo. So on the history side, obviously it's a lot lower, but I did think it was worth taking a brief look at the history of zoos to set us up to why we are building a modern zoo and not one of the more problematic older zoos. But where the science comes in is where it holds up for me. So the science is interwoven in this game pretty good, I think. I enjoyed learning the history of the zoos, but I find the mechanical integration of the science themes most fascinating. So I'm going to give this a 4 for the history and science, mostly the science. After learning the science of animal enclosures and the importance of placement of animals has made me appreciate this game even more, in my opinion. They did a fantastic job displaying what an actual scientific zoo would need to plan for in reality. So that is a 4 for the science and history. Let's talk about the overall gameplay. Let's pull theme out for a minute, and how well does this game play in general, and how does it hold up on our scale? So, like I said, this is a mostly solitaire game, but me personally, that does not prevent me from enjoying every game I've played so far. Every game I've played of Ark Nova, I have thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, with the higher player counts, you're going to be sitting at the table for a lot longer. But that's not a big deal for me in this specific game because I am having fun. The game does steer players towards certain goals. I mentioned this, such as the basic conservation projects, but to me, there's still enough room to customize your own zoo on how you want it. You're not going to be able to do that fully. You're going to have to play those tags that are needed by the basic conservations. But if you find the right combos within cards, you can essentially build your own engine away from those conservation projects. There's a reason why this game is one of the top games on Board Game Geek, and I think most people would agree that building your zoo and placing animals is just satisfying at the table. It's a good game overall. The gameplay's fairly smooth, but building a zoo, who doesn't enjoy doing that? So gameplay for me, it's up there. I love this game. It's a solid 4, as long as you're okay with a little bit of downtime with higher player counts. And that's going to do it. All right, that's my ratings for Ark Nova on the thematic scale. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on your experiences with this game and where you stand on the thematic scale. Did I get something wrong? Do you think I got something right? Where do you see? Are you able to find that theme as you play Ark Nova? Please let me know. Also, what aspects of Ark Nova's mechanisms do you think captures real zoo management the best? Do you think it's the balancing of the 2 score tracks, or do you think it's the spatial puzzle of building the enclosures, or is there something I totally missed? What do you think? What mechanism do you think brings the theme out the most in this game? And that's going to do it. Let's hit some outro notes, and we're going to call it a day. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed your time so far. So here we go to the outro. That's going to be it for today on the periodic table of components. If you enjoyed your time here today, please hit that follow button on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you want to engage with me or with others, or just share your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to help the show grow, I would appreciate it if you left a review, preferably a positive review, but hey, just let me know how you feel about the show so far. You can find me on social media at Periodic Table Picks on Instagram. Here I will post periodically, hence the name, of games I've been playing, and even a little bit of follow-on pictures of the games I talk about in this podcast, so you can follow me there. I am at the Periodic Table of Components on Facebook. And finally, TPTOC podcast on Blue Sky. I would love to engage with any of you guys and discuss these topics on your favorite games. You can find further information regarding this episode and the podcast in the show notes. I have offered some of the resources where I've found the information for this episode. And then lastly, I'll be back periodically with more history and science of your favorite board games. What game am I going to choose next? I got a couple floating in my head, but I can't wait to learn the history or science of this specific game. So, until then, keep rolling, keep learning, and keep building those stories around the table. I've been your host, Greg. Catch you next time.